Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, maybe even good night for some of you. Today, we have another interview with a super guest, one of the top interview guests so far, a man that is building the forefront of one of the largest developers communities out there, gathering all of the good information in one place so you can go there and just check. Have you ever wondered what's the best new model out there? What's the dev tool raising more capital? And all these guy know, and he knows probably before everyone else. Let me invite him, Nimrod Kramer from Daily Dev.
Yeah,
Welcome,
hey,
Nimrod.
Matheus. How are you doing?
Doing great. How about you? Thank you very much for coming to our community vibe space.
The pleasure is all mine. Let's rock. I really love the intro the intro thing. Some good rock music always pumps you up to get started.
Yeah, that's the idea. It's quite late for you, right? I guess you got your coffee and rock music to get you rolling.
Look, I'm a night owl. I love working late at night. I'm really a horrible person in the mornings. Like you definitely don't want to talk with me before the first cup of coffee. And sometimes even after the first cup of coffee, I'm just a horrible person in the morning. But at night, I flourish. I have my quiet, I can focus, I can get like so many things done without all the meetings, all the distractions. So yeah,
Yeah,
you have all of my attention.
that's the trait of a true developer. So we know that you are one of a kind, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Beautiful. Well, Nimrod, why don't you introduce yourself a bit to our community? Most of them should know you already, but for whomever doesn't know you, maybe they want to hear from you first.
Sure, definitely. So hi everyone, pleasure to meet you. My name is Nimrod Kramer, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called daily.dev. And for those of you who never heard about us, daily.dev is the homepage that developers and builders have always deserved, right? One of the things that really make people who build software in all sorts of different ways, and we're going to talk about that in a second. One of the things that make them great is just a lot of us are generally very curious. We're intellectually curious. We want to read stuff. We want to see what's going on out there. But the problem is that the further we go along in the journey, and the more senior we become, and the more things we learn, we start to become more and more busy. Sometimes it's just because we're getting more responsibilities. If we have our own business, if we're freelancing, we might have more clients. We're just going to have less time. And also in our personal lives, right? Like people sometimes get married, they have kids, they start to have a lot of other things that just get them away from from the stuff that they were passionate about, which is the love of the craft, you know, really building and being out there in the trenches late at night, and just doing cool stuff. And daily dev really helps you kind of like bridge that gap. So if you care about knowing what's happening out there, what are the latest releases, what's the newest thing, what's the hype currently, what's the trend, or if you just want to like get really good technical content without having to go through hundreds of different sources until you find like a good piece of information and you want it to be like personalized just to what matters to you, then daily dev is the perfect place to do so. One of the things that we're really proud about is that daily dev is both an open source project but also free forever. So from day one we built the platform in a way that tries to help developers as individuals. If you think about it, a lot of the different like developer tools and the coding platforms and the AI platforms, etc., all of them are, yes, they're aimed at helping us write and produce better software, but in one way or another, they're serving the employer more than ourselves. And we always wanted to have this platform that it's just going to be there for us, for our own personal and professional growth throughout the entire career, and that this platform, this profile, and this account on daily dev, it's just going to be yours. It's not your employer's, it's not anyone else's. It's just for you to nurture and use as much as you possibly want and need, and just to get inspiration, get perspective, and so on and so forth. I can maybe show real quick how it looks like for those who've never seen that. um, so this is, I hope we can see my screen. Cool, yeah. So this is daily.dev. What you do when you start using it, you just like, as I said, it's entirely free. You just need to sign up and you verify yourself. You will go through onboarding, and then you're going to get a content feed that is personalized just to the technologies that matter to you. So if you're using a particular coding agent, if you're using a particular programming language, library, etc., all of these things are going to be taken into account in order to generate a feed of content that that is tailored and curated to you. And the way it's tailored and curated is through the wisdom of the crowd. So Daily Dev has a community of millions of developers that are coming here every single day, multiple times a day, and they just vote with their own hands. They look at what content is interesting, they comment on that content, and there's a lot of threads. I'm going to show it in a second. And that helps us and helps our recommendation engines understand what makes more sense, what matters more. And that content is more likely to appear in your feed, and it's constantly being refreshed. There's like always something new out there. So even if you don't find something right on the spot, probably in an hour there's going to be something else. Um, so you land on this feed with a lot of different like pieces of content, and every content can be consumed on the platform, or you can go to the original post, and there are a lot of different threads and comments, or like a very strong community layer here where you can chat with other fellow builders, etc., etc. If you're into communities, so we have tens of thousands of micro communities on the platform where you can join other people who build things that are similar to you, share content with them, get to know one another, etc., etc. If you're looking for something particular, you can go and search. It could be, I don't know, if you're interested in Claude, just an example, you can go here, you can search posts about Claude, people who write about Claude, the official Claude announcements, all these kinds of stuff are on the platform. I think I'm going to stop here. It's really up to you to try and find and explore. And what I hope to bring here today's session is to zoom out for a second and talk about what's the state of the global developer community, who is a developer, what it means to be great for anyone who's building software. And I think what's fascinating about the time we're living now is that the definition of who is a developer is changing, right? There's going to be this like tsunami of the next 1 billion people that are going to build software. And it has so many different implications that potentially we can unbundle in today's conversation and talk about them a little bit more. My goal here is to try and give you the perspective of someone who sees all the developer content that's out there on the internet ever since 2018, and I see what people actually care about, and I see what kind of content people consume that actually makes them eventually great and makes them do this like breakthrough in their career. And it's never like one particular piece of content. Let me give you a spoiler about that. It's more about the habit and the consistency, etc. We can talk about that in a second. But I'm here to try and give you those insights that maybe would inspire you by a tiny bit to be a slightly better version than what you're now, and help you achieve your dreams, hopefully.
Yeah, so much to unpack here. The daily dev platform or idea has evolved a lot in the last years, right? It was like the extension and the whole platform, and now you guys have this. It's kind of a gamification, right? The developer economy that you can kind of grow inside the platform. I find it very interesting, and it also a picture of how developers have been evolving in the last decade or so, 2 decades, right? Things are changing so fast. Oh my god! Before we jump into it, before we start the subject, let's just get a sense of the numbers. What's the size of the dev community right now? And what countries or locations do you have like on top demographics in your community?
Yeah, so daily dev, in terms of like the traffic that we're seeing, gets between 50 to 100 million visits a month. That's a site with a lot of traffic. There's a lot of engagement here. There's a lot of different people.
Yeah,
In that kind of scale, we have people from all over the world. And I think that when we try to look at what makes sense and what's an anomaly, so what makes sense is the geographic distribution. There's like different hubs around the world that have more developers than other hubs, which is in North America. Now South America and Brazil in particular is a massive
yeah,
massive developer community. There's a huge community also in India, in different parts of Europe. So we're global. There's like people from all over the place, which I think is quite magical. What I do think that is quite unique about daily dev is the ratio of mid-level to senior engineers as opposed to junior engineers. So there's a lot of seniors actually that are hanging out on the platform. About 60% of the platform are people who are mid to senior level engineers. So if you're doing your first steps, that's kind of like the ideal place to be and hang out with other people that have been there, done that for a couple years more than you do. And it's a good opportunity to engage with them and to talk with them and just see how they interact and what kind of things they read. That's kind of like a huge opportunity. And one more thing I wanted to say in the beginning, I'm a very informal person. I'm very casual. I don't have notes here of things that I want to say, etc. So this is an AMA session almost, right? So feel free at any point in time to drop the questions in the chat. More than happy to answer whatever question you have, whatever unpopular opinion. Like, take me to the extreme, really. Whatever I can talk about, I'm going to be talking about. Um, and yeah, let's see where it takes us.
Beautiful. So shout out to all of the community from the United States, all the Brazilians, a lot of dev communities in Brazil, India, of course, one of the biggest population of developers out there. So I'm going to enable the comments here in the page for a while. So, and we do have some good questions coming as well. So I want all of you, we have about 20 or something people watching live right now. If you have questions, you can drop in the chat. But before that, tell me where you're from, maybe country and city or something like that, so that we can measure the demographics here. We want it to be interactive. And Nimrod is going to pick a lot of questions. Let me just open with a few ones on myself. As you guys know, before doing vibe coding stuff, I was teaching people how to code, like JavaScript and Python, from all of that for more than 10 years. And in 2023, we saw, ChatGPT came up. No one wants to learn how to code anymore, unfortunately, as fun as it is. And the developer term, what means to be a developer, has changed a lot. Some people are using AI agents, Lovable, Base 44, V0, and all, and they don't even know what is the code behind, and they're calling themselves developers. So, Nimrod, let me give you this first very difficult task of drawing a line. When can we start naming a person a developer, and when can we say not yet? Come back in a few months.
I think that what we're seeing now is that, yeah, the definition is changing, but I'd like to think, and the way I describe it to our investors, that they're not developers themselves, right? Is in circles, right? So what used to be the mainstream developer, which is someone who is, say, like, in the simplistic way, like write code for living, right? If that even makes sense. It's obviously a lot more than that, and for people that's kind of like, not only a way to get a paycheck, but it's also a passion and an art and a lot of different things that are way more emotional behind it. And I think that what used to be the mainstream developer is gradually becoming the traditional developer, like that. And I think the interesting part is, since coding is getting democratized to some extent, we can argue about how good it is, how efficient it is, etc. Like, there's a lot of different opinions here, but we can, I think at this point we can stop arguing about the fact that there's a lot of people that are able to produce code and build software. And the number of people that are going to be able to do that in the coming years is going to be 10 times, 20, 50 times more than what we used to think about the traditional developers. The traditional developers, people are just like, they grew up learning to write code, whether it was through books, if you're like more senior, whether it's through YouTube, if you're a little bit more fresh into the industry. That community, that global community, accounted for about 25 to 30 million developers. Some would claim 50 million. It doesn't really matter, but we're talking about a couple tens of millions of people globally. When we think about anyone who would be able to produce software going forward, we're talking about another billion. This is what like most of the estimates are. Now, not all of the billion are going to be people who are able to produce good software, and not all of them are going to be able to do that consistently. Not all of them are going to produce software that actually is being used by other people. But one thing is almost certain, that the world that we lived in, where about 25, 30 million people built the software that's being used by billions, that dynamic is going to change. And by the way, we love to think that 25 million built for billions. As a matter of fact, it was like a much smaller group of people who are employed by companies that have this kind of like billion people level reach and users. So that's definitely a lot less than 25 million. We're going to have more people that are impacting our lives. I'm looking at my grandma. She's using an app to schedule appointment with her doctor. There's a developer behind it. 5-10 years from now, that developer might not be the same persona as the one that we're used to think about nowadays. So yeah, things are changing. I think the bigger question is not how many people are going to be able to write software. That, like, whatever would happen. Like, it doesn't really matter that much. I think that there are two interesting questions. One interesting question is, what would make a great developer great? Like, what used to be great 5-10 years ago, and what's going to be great in 5-10 years from now? That's one interesting question. The other question is that if you're in a position that you already understand deep technical concepts, there's once in a lifetime opportunity right now, literally. It's a life-changing event for people who comprehend that, and we start seeing the early kind of like signs of that trend. And I want to talk about both these points, and Mateus, feel free to kind of like pitch in. If you ask me like what used to make a developer great, it usually started from people who are thinkers, right? They love to tinker about things, or like genuinely passionate about writing software, etc., which got them to the point that they're able to produce high quality code. And now we can talk about high quality code, high quality software, and applications and systems, etc. Now we can talk about what it means. It's easily maintainable, it's well documented, it's clean, it's efficient, it's whatever. There's like a lot of different criteria, but that part of writing code becomes less and less important as we go into the future. And the big question is going to be like, what would be great in the future? And I think that at the core, what's really important to understand is that AI agents allow us to sort of like outsource our knowledge to some extent. And for people who are slightly older here in the crowd, when Google just like stormed into the lives of many people, there was like a lot of concern that people would stop memorizing things, right? Because you can just Google things and find them on search. So when you think about how the education system worked, like a big part of that was around memorizing concepts, memorizing knowledge and information, and all of a sudden it's available. So you don't need to memorize; you can just pull it whenever you need. Now we're entering the phase where retrieving knowledge is kind of like the baseline, right? And we're entering an era where you can even outsource that knowledge. You don't even need to know it. You don't even need to retrieve it. You can sort of like rent it to some extent. So you can outsource your knowledge, but the one thing you cannot outsource, and that's going to be the differentiator between people who are going to be sort of like left behind or are going to become commodity, and people who will excel, is that you can outsource the knowledge. You cannot outsource your understanding. Understanding how things work, that's, I think, the biggest differentiator. And the people who are best positioned to do that are people who have built software by hand, right? They've written it by hand. They've been in the trenches, and they've tried to solve the problem themselves, to the point that they understand how systems work. They understand how to solve very complex technical problems. They understand the different trade-offs of different like architectural designs. There's a lot of different elements that are quite difficult to comprehend if you're just prompting.
Yeah, it's a debate as old as the calculator. I think in universities, should we allow the students to use a calculator or no, right? And now, as you mentioned, the googling stuff instead of memorizing, and now it's like, do I write the lines of code myself, or do I use an agent to write those for me? So these are the kind of debates that are out there, and it's really difficult to draw a line, right? I find it interesting your example of your grandmother, because this is a great picture. Vibe coders, grandmothers that are using ChatGPT to produce code. Should we call them developers? Maybe yes, right?
I look. Um, there's a surface level argument of whether like someone is a developer or not. And I think the people who are getting paid to write software will not define them as developers, which is fair. Like I don't have anything against that. But I think it doesn't really matter, because if you have someone, I'll give you an example. Like we have a design team of two people. One of them is a co-founder. One of my co-founders, his name is Tsahi. That guy, I have never written a line of code in his life. And a lot of the most magical features that you now see on Daily Dev were written fully by him. And what he brings to the table is two things. He brings very, very deep understanding of what users want, which is, it doesn't matter if you know how to write code. If you build things that no one wants, it doesn't matter, right? We can all agree on that. And the second thing, he brings taste. This is what he did for a living for 20 years. Like, he is just a taste. Is taste with legs. Like, this is how I call it. Like, your taste with legs. Like, whatever you do, it has taste. Whatever I
It's
do is
just such a
distasteful. Whatever you do has taste. And so, is that person a developer? No, I think it doesn't really matter, because if he's able to produce a new experience that's then being used by millions and loved by millions, and so why does it even matter, right?
beautiful. Yeah. It makes so much sense. Personally, it's a lot of vibe coders, and all the developers out there that might get annoyed with that concept. As you said, they might become an extra layer above, like super developers who knows like texture and security and all. They can do much more with those AI agents. So that exciting times already for those 1 billion developers, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Well, let me just do a call out again for all of the viewers and members watching us around the world. We have a lot of people in the United States here, Santa Monica, Texas. Some people listen from the book. Yeah, here in this side of the Atlantic, it's still like middle of the afternoon, but I'm sure that people will tune in after. And we do have a question from Bozy, if I got your name correctly, show here in the stage. This is a great question actually for everyone building content out there. How do you make this? They were referring about daily dev. How do you make daily dev agent ready? Since every surface today has to have an interface that is friendly for AI agents, maybe scrape bots and these kind of things.
It's a very simple answer. We have an API and also an MCP, which is still internal. And we have experimented with the API with a small group of users to sort of like optimize and find the exact angle that's going to be useful for people to use. And we've tested that with the initial group, and we then also ran a hackathon to see what people actually build with that. And we're very soon going to release that to the public and have a free version of that, so everyone can consume daily dev in an agent first manner, which is bread and butter today. Like, if you don't do that, you're behind the scenes. The reason why you're behind the game, sorry. The reason why we didn't jump on it and do it first, because obviously again, we're in daily dev. Like, we're seeing all the content on the internet. We see what everyone does at any point in time. Any company, we see what they launch. We see what's getting traction, what doesn't get traction. So we definitely spotted that this is something that's important. On the other hand, we still do remember some cases of companies that launched APIs and developer programs and eventually screwed it up, decided to close those programs, and lost the entire trust of the developer community. And the only thing we have at Daily Dev is developer trust. Like, if we don't have trust among developers, like, there is no existence for us to live. I think the prime examples are Twitter, that they basically fucked up twice with the API program. Another example, very more recent one, is Reddit. It was like an entire massive ecosystem of apps and plugins and moderation. Like, there's been a huge ecosystem around Reddit that made Reddit what it is, and it was contributed by a massive community of developers that relied on the Reddit API. And all of a sudden, these people wake up one day and they understand that they're being rug pulled, and they're not going to have access to that API anymore because it doesn't align with whatever long-term direction the company has. So the last thing we wanted to do is something like quick and dirty, putting something out there without having clarity about how this will play out in the long-term journey of daily dev. Because the last thing we want to do is to disappoint developers. Like we're all about making them and empowering them and that kind of thing. So it took us a bit longer. In the next few weeks, we're gonna have something quite exciting to share with the community.
No, that's great. Excited to see this MCP server. Speaking about like these dev problems, we have a lot of community from the Web3 industry, and unfortunately, it happens so often there of like developer communities being thrown around. They create value, pump tokens, and then they just left stranded. Happens a lot with open source projects that suddenly become like closed source overnight as well. And they see that you guys are very serious with daily dev, and you guys want to do something that stands and would treat the developer community with all the care that they deserve. So I'm excited. Just a quick question on that, expanding on this one. Is this these MCPs only for like getting data out of daily dev, or do you think that the AI agents can like multiple kind of idea? AI agents can post and interact there as well.
I think that taps into a bigger question, which is what world are we currently living in? And I'm going to share the two sides of the same story. I think I'm going to start with the pessimistic side, just because we're there's a lot of technical people here, so it's nice to talk about the dark mode first and then the light mode afterwards. So the dark mode version of what I'm going to tell here is that I think that we're living in the post-truth era, and by that I mean is that there's the concept of truth is no longer substantial as it used to be. For a lot of people globally, what truth means or how truth is created is through frequency. So for a lot of people, if they hear the same thing over and over, they believe that this is true, which is kind of sad, right? On one hand, so that's the dark mode version of the story. And in a post truth era, the last thing that you want is something that can pump misinformation or it can pump slop at scale, because that just accelerates a trend which I personally believe is not good for us, for humans, for the community, etc. The light mode version of that is that we're entering the age of authenticity, right? So that's like another way to tell the same story, where if you're being authentic, the authentic self, the authentic version of yourself, and just putting yourself out there in the most vulnerable way, that will be appreciated a lot more going forward. And it's going to stand out a lot more. And by allowing agents to interact both with humans and also between them and themselves on top of a platform that's there to facilitate human interaction, it carries a lot of risk. And I don't think that the technology is right there. And I think the prime example, by the way, if you want to see how it looks like, if you want to see how agents interact, just go on LinkedIn. I think that's the every other comment on LinkedIn is basically a bot, so you can see how it looks like. So if you want to see what happens when bots start posting at scale, definitely go there. But the even more hardcore example is something called Maltbook. I don't know if you've came across this thing. So there's OpenClaw, and it had like a bunch of other names before that. It started as CloudBot. And at some point, there was a guy on Twitter that just decided to launch a social network for bots, for agents, where they can chat and interact with one another. I think it was a fantastic social experiment. And I've spent like a decent amount of hours there, like watching how bots interact with each other. It was super funny. There's been so many different conspiracies around it. But it didn't like go anywhere eventually. It was like a nice social experience, and it ended there. So I personally don't think that we're in a stage where we want to allow agents to go and interact on the platform. We definitely are in the stage where we want agents to benefit from the platform. So Daily Dev is the best platform in the world in helping developers stay up to date. And we want to expand it to also be the best platform in the world that helps agents stay up to date. That's kind of like the natural evolvement of where we are now and where we're going to be probably in a year times from now.
Well, I was more asking because like most of the dev discussions out there are usually for people discussing like stack My camera just glitched here. Sorry about that. People discussing stack. People discussing like should I use Ruby on Rails or Go or Rust, whatever. But now that everyone's like just prompting agents, maybe the discussions are going to shift, like prompting techniques or tools or something like that, right? And maybe the agents will discuss themselves that kind of stack what they're using under the hood. That would be a crazy future to live on.
Yeah.
But speaking of which, like Golang community is huge here in Brazil. A lot of JavaScript communities around the world that are like company communities like Microsoft, IBM, Oracle. They're huge around there. Java community in the world as well. But now we are seeing on the topic of developer marketing, right? We are seeing the companies like Vercel, Supabase, Cognition. We have OpenAI, Cloud, building all of these developer ecosystems out there, and this is exactly what data dev is for, right? Do you have any insights or directions for people to understand how the dev communities are going and how these companies are kind of like building a landscape around developer marketing?
Yeah, we're currently living in a world where there is fierce, fierce competition on attention. Like, attention is worth more than gold, more than money, more than anything. Attention is the most important currency in the world, and it's going to become 100 times more important as we go into the future. And this is something we deeply believe in, and we are very fortunate to be in a place where we built a business that has a lot of that attention, and not only a lot of attention from people who are really sought after by other large players. And a lot of what we do at Daily Dev is to try to facilitate the conversation and facilitate the interaction between those like large corporate enterprises that they can be sometimes boring and uninteresting, and the global developer community that seeks the authenticity. Developers are like the best bullshit detectors in the world. So you cannot really do developer marketing with them. Like I by chance, really by chance, I'm walking with this shirt today that says developer marketing is anything but marketing. And that is our slogan whenever I talk to like devrels and dev marketing teams in some of the largest companies in the world. I constantly say that if you are here to go and shove something down the throat of developers, it's not going to work. They won't like it. Eventually, what you want to do, give, you want to show them what you're doing. Like, don't tell them all the fluff. Don't tell them things like it's going to save you time, it's going to lower the cost. Like they've heard that pitch a million times before. 99% of the time, it didn't deliver on the promise. And in the 1% where it did deliver on the promise, it doesn't matter, because eventually the only question that matters is that, do I need that? Does it do what I expect to do? And can I try it myself? That's it. So what you want to focus on is creating an amazing experience that anyone can walk through the front door, just try the thing, and realize if it's for them or not. This is one part of the game. The other part of the game, which I think is also quite an interesting observation that not many understand, is that when it comes to developers and eventually anyone who builds, they they choose what kind of solution they want to use way before they actually have the problem. So that goes back to the curiosity aspect. And we see that all the time. Like we see a lot of developers researching about different authentication solutions. Many of them are not building anything in authenticate that needs authentication right now, but they're trying like different authentication providers. Why? Because they know maybe at some point I'm going to build something. I want to know what kind of platform to use. So if you're trying to win developers and you're trying to be there right at the moment where they're going to choose the authentication provider, you've already lost, right? Because they've probably chosen, they said, all right, in my next side project, I want to use that provider or that provider. Why? Because I think this is cool. Why? Because I think there's like some part of the technology, some part of the integration, something about it that was really appealing that I want to try it. So if you want to win, you need to understand that developers are builders and they are here to try out things. This is what they love, playing with things in their hands. This is what you want to do, and not necessarily sell them on the spot. That's one part of the game. The other part of the game that you really need to think long term. a lot of people who have a lot of influence to buy your product and take it inside, like let's say someone who works at Microsoft that could potentially implement your product and get it like org wide, they won't necessarily use your tool the first thing they do it in a work context. Might start from a weekend project, then it could be for another internal project, but something quite limited. And then after they see the value, it can proliferate and expand further. So patience here really, really matters. Developer experience is, I think, everything. There's if you don't have good developer experience and if you're not 100% clear at what the tool you're doing does, and you're not letting people understand what it does within like 2 seconds or like 5 seconds, then you have no right to exist in today's world. And I'm not even starting to talk about the fact that a lot of the choices around which tools people are using are now starting to be made by agents, not by humans. But not even talking about that. That's an entire other
Yeah.
story. But yeah.
That would be my follow up question. What about all these people that just ask agent to build something? They're going to use like super base authentication, next authentication behind the hood, and they don't even know what is authentication, uh, where what's a database or something like that. How do you consider marketing for these people? It's more like GEO, or it's more like plugins. What do you see happening in the industry for these cases?
All of the developer tooling companies are fighting one fight right now, which is to be the default tool in their own category. So if you're a database company, you want to be the default database that agents would recommend. If you are an email infrastructure company, you want to be the default infra whenever someone wants an email infrastructure. That's the game they're playing. When it comes to the individual developer or vibe coder or someone who just builds and doesn't choose, I think my number one practical advice is to spend at least the same amount of time that you're spending prompting the agent to actually produce code and prompting the agent to explain you what it does. That's so important. I can tell you, like I'm CEO of a company. I'm not writing code for a living. It's not what I do on a daily basis. Most of the things I do is basically talk. Like I'm good at talking. That's the only thing I'm good at. And some people think that I'm also good at, which is why I do whatever I do. And by the way, I experienced the biggest imposter syndrome ever in any kind of situation, any kind of room I walk in. I always feel I'm the dumbest person in the room. But sometimes I see something on the platform that I want to change, but I'm very distant from the code base. I'm not interacting with our code base on a daily basis, and it evolves and it expands, etc. And a lot of the times, if I want to build something, I actually want to start. I will start with the AI agent asking, all right, I want to build this feature. Can you go into the code base and explain to me how does it work right now? What's the architecture? What are the different elements? What's the design system? What exists? What doesn't exist? So I would first understand like what kind of ground I'm going to walk on, how stable it is, and then how does it work. And then I would try to plan together with the agent. I would try to consider like multiple approaches. And if I see multiple approaches and I don't understand the trade-offs, I would then spend some time with the agent to ask him like, what are the different trade-offs? Like if I choose this versus that, what's going to be the outcome? What's going to be the short-term, long-term consideration here, etc. And that really allows me to better understand. It goes back to the point that yes, you can outsource the knowledge, and the agent has all the knowledge. It has the knowledge about the code base, has knowledge about the industry, it has knowledge about a bunch of tools, a bunch of techniques, etc. But I don't want it to own the understanding. So I want to first understand, and then once I feel that I understood, I can start making decisions. And that usually results in a much better software, a much better product that people appreciate and love, and are using. But if you're building just for yourself, that's fine. I think part of the excitement in the beginning is just like build something, use it yourself, get excited. The next step, try to get other people to use it. Then things will start breaking, right? And when they start break, maybe you need to like take the whole project, throw it in the trash, and build it from scratch. This time, You're a lot more educated about the user, you're a lot more educated about the business case, and you're also a lot more educated about the different decisions, technical decisions that you made implicitly without really deeply thinking or understanding about, that now you will consider in much greater depth.
That's a great way to put it. The AI becomes kind of your teacher while you are implementing. Before I do my follow up question, just wanted to open the floor for everyone watching the live today. I see a lot of people around East Coast, West Coast. Most of them are from United States in this time zone. Nimrod, maybe in the next one we do a little later on your time zone if you allow us. But I wanted to open the floor for everyone asking questions. I can highlight the question here in the chat so that we get multiple perspectives from the audience. In the meantime, let me do a follow up there. You mentioned that those infra companies, they're trying to become the default recommendations, like for database authentication, email, and all. It is kind of a winner takes all kind of scenario, right? The problem is that there are a lot of nuances. Sometimes tool it's better in one circumstance in one situation for a certain volume or security standards, and another stack is better SQL to NoSQL or all the kind of decisions. If you were just blindly taking those decisions down, swallowing those decisions down from the AI agents, it becomes much more like it's marketing, like you told, but like sold on. They don't even know that there are other tools, there are other stacks for them to use, right? Is this something that you see happen from the kind of posts and the knowledge you have there from daily dev?
About what? How to become like the default in ChatGPT?
Well, developers might be quite, let me use a bad word here, pissed off when the AI keep pushing down a stack that they don't like. Let's say a MongoDB developer that loves NoSQL gets um, gets angry correcting their agent all the time because they just want to use Postgres with Superbase, something like that. So, do you see these kind of conversations happening there on daily dev?
All the time, yeah, of course, of course. We need to
Is
think about what's actually changing here, right? So we're moving from a world where you as a human would have a certain problem, need, or passion. You would go and research what kinds of tools are out there, and you would go on their websites and you would try it out and you'd get like firsthand experience, and you outsource that to an agent, right? So if you do that, again, it's totally fine if you're not very much opinionated about what tools you want to use, and if you don't care about understanding what are different trade-offs that each tool have. But I think at some point, if you are delivering software in production that serves real business, that makes money, that needs to serve a lot of users, you just can get away from really understanding what are different vendors, what do they offer, etc. I think that AI is great in speeding up the process of understanding what are different alternatives that you want to consider. Um, Letting the AI just like automatically pick the vendor for you, just because it's easier for the agent to do certain implementation, I think that's like an irrelevant consideration. It's almost
yeah,
like telling me, yeah, I'm gonna build a house here because here the house is gonna be built the fastest possible, right? But it can be in a shithole, pardon my language. You don't want to live there. I mean, so it doesn't matter if the house is going to get built there as quickly as possible. If no one's there, there's going to be no grocery stores. There's going to be no school for the kids there. So there's no reason to live there, right? So you need to have like broader perspective.
yeah. And the else is saying we have to dev Alex saying that understanding and learning the trade-offs, these tool selections is part of the fun. Yeah, I, I, I
100%.
I do agree with that. What if we could use daily dev MCP and use that in the decision process of all of those AI agents for them to actually pick the best stack for each case, for each situation, based on the actual conversation happening inside daily dev. That could be a great way to direct and fine tune agents, right?
Yeah, when we first met, I told you you're brilliant. There are some things that I cannot talk about. This is one of them. But I'll just talk about the problem space. I'll explain like what do we see and what that's a massive opportunity that's in front of us. Eventually, all the different LLMs, they have a certain knowledge cutoff. Now, the AI labs are spending a lot of resources to apply different techniques for continuous training, etc. But those methodologies have only like marginal returns. At some point, every AI lab needs to go back to the drawing board and train a model from scratch. And when you then use that model in the context of AI coding, whether that's through Cursor, Claude Code, Codex, whatever you like using, doesn't really matter. Then the model would operate based on its cutoff, and whenever there is a time-sensitive prompt, or when the model senses that it needs up-to-date, fresh information, it would then use web search to complete the gap. There are two problems with web search. First problem is that it's very undeterministic and it follows authority. And sometimes the fresh knowledge that the agent actually needs in order to plan better and execute better, doesn't live in high authority sites, as we were used to think in the previous version of the internet. So it might search, in other simple words, it might use web search, but it won't retrieve the relevant the relevant pages that actually brings the meaningful information. The second part is that web search is very expensive. Expensive to who? Not to you. It's expensive to the AI company, whether that's like XAI, OpenAI, Anthropic, etc. So when you look at coding agents and how much they actually search the internet, they don't do that as frequently as you think. And the reason behind, again, it's very expensive. For every prompt, yes, you have rate limits, but eventually there's inference, there's like real costs associated with that on the other end. And the goal for the AI labs is to be able to deliver the best content possible with the least amount of tokens, which it's a conflict of interest. Like, you as a user of these platforms and the platform builders themselves, you're not in the same side of the game. They don't want to give you the best capability, period, and the most capable model, period. They want to give you the best possible result with the least amount of tokens. You're not in the same side of the table, and that means that oftentimes they will cut corners, and at what expense? At the expense of quality of software that you're going to be able to produce. We believe that that web search in the context of coding agents is going to die. It's going to be a different solution. It's going to be way more efficient, and it's going to be able to both solve the knowledge cutoff problem and keep the token efficiency way lower than what it currently is. And I hope that sometimes we're going to be able to talk about that. We'll see.
Well, I understand that if there are things that you can't disclosure right now, but this is a very common topic. Whenever we do intro sessions on setting up AI agents like with Cursor or Cloud Code, and always speak about MCPs and context management. One of the most famous is one called Context 7 that is aiming for exactly that. Your agent is thinking that Tailwind 2 is the most up to date package because it was the cutoff when it was trained. But then it's using Tailwind 3 and everything breaks in the middle. And when people do the web search, they think that it would solve the problem, all of this cost now, but they also don't see the attack vector that this can become. Because you might be pulling wrong information out of the web. People might be maliciously poisoning the result of the coding agent that you are writing, and we're not even reading the code with some bad directions, making vulnerability, something like that. So I do see a possible niche, a need. Again, if we can disclose, no problem. But if you could solve that with MCP server, that would get like the developer knowledge and wrap it into clear, precise directions for your agents, that would be super cool. If you want to do
There
that,
used to be one site that could have done that. Their name is Stack Overflow.
yeah.
I think that is already part of history right now. Very unfortunately, there's been generations of developers that grew on that site.
That boat has sailed
But
or sunk, right?
if you've listened to everything I've said, you've probably got like the picture. Daily Dev is the world's largest developer content aggregator. What we do better than anyone else in the world, that's the only thing we do better than anyone else, is aggregating developer content and knowledge. And it's both through different like systems we have in place, but we also have a really, really big community that helps make it happen. And not only that the community helps source the knowledge, they also help rank the content, which gives different signals of what matters than other things, and that is valuable. And we're still playing with different kind of technologies that we're building, and we see real alpha and how coding agents are performing with and without daily dev. And yeah, we'll see how it plays out.
Well, I'm excited. Where do I join the wait list? Do you have a link, by the way?
I
Call
don't
to
even have
action?
a wait list for that. No.
Oh, come on. Where's the wait list for the wait list? Email
Yeah.
you. Okay. Yeah, but we're almost in the last minutes of today's interview. Let's say if someone gets to this video in the future and wants to know more about daily dev, how to get in the loop for this MCP capability that we were discussing, what would be the best next steps for people that want to move forward?
It's quite simple. Just go sign up to Daily Dev, and everyone who ever signed up is going to be announced about it once it's there. It's daily.dev. It's like the company name, the product name, the brand name is all the same. It's like daily.dev. You go there, and all is sorted. You can use it as a browser extension. You can use it as a normal website if you prefer. Not use it as a browser extension. You can use it on mobile, iOS, and Android. Most of our community uses that as a browser extension just because it helps you kind of like build the habit, which we didn't get a lot of chance to talk about it, but the single most important piece of improving is being consistent and having those like small wins, and consistently reading and learning on like small doses on a daily basis, sometimes even multiple times a day. That is going to compound like drastically over 5 or 10 years, and it's quite easy to underestimate that. And daily dev is really good and was really designed at helping you generate that habit and create that habit and reinforce that habit. And there's like different systems in place that we've built in order to both make it fun. But if you're new to this game, start with a browser extension, because that takes over the new tab, which means that you're going to be exposed to interesting knowledge throughout the day, and you can always bookmark things, and whenever you have a couple minutes spare, you can go then and read it more intentionally. um, but that is the single most powerful hack to create a learning habit, the most underrated hack if you ask me, and the most opinionated hack as well, because not everyone's happy to give away their new tab. um, but it's all about trade-offs, right? We've had this discussion here.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's super needed because, like, if AI is taking that much of the usual job of developers of writing the code, now we need to learn way more. It's not only about code; it's about architecture, it's about cybersecurity, DevOps, infrastructure. Like you said, like taste, product, and all of that only comes by practicing. And as you said, it compounds. If you do that for a week, you don't see results. Keep doing that for a month, and then for a year, for a couple of years, and then eventually you're a senior developer earning $1 million in salary and equity, right? So
Yeah,
that's
and there's actually something really cool. If you don't want to use any of that and you're a Claude Code user specifically, so we launched just today. We launched something really cool. Let me share my screen so I can show it to everyone.
oh,
It's free.
how,
You can just go ahead and try it. We launched Daily Dev for Claude Code. So we all know that we're spending a lot of time waiting in Claude Code, especially in the CLI. So we've launched a plugin where you can get like the hottest developer news right there when you wait, in a very seamless way, non-intrusive. Just install the plugin and you're good to go. If you just sign in to Daily Dev, you can get access to that entirely free. It's a new experiment. I don't know how people will react to it, but it's quite a fun one. And yep,
That should be cool. It would be nice if we could ask like follow up questions
yeah.
from the agents, but I can see that happen. I keep staring to my terminal way too long. If we had a feed of daily dev news there, would make total sense.
Yeah, but it's a fine line because eventually we don't want to distract you from your work. When you're in Cloud Code, you're probably building something, you need to be concentrated, etc. So we thought let's just put it there whenever you're waiting long periods of time, so you can read something interesting while Cloud works. It's like a good use of the time instead of doom scrolling in Instagram or Twitter or whatever. Like that's probably slightly better version of content consumption. But we'll see. We'll see the reactions. It's been launched today, and I see that it was already seen by more than 100,000 developers. So
Beautiful.
seems like it has some adoption, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see the feedback probably in the coming days.
That's a great space, especially if it's relevant. Let's say you are writing something to the cloud, like storing files, and then there is a headline: Cloudflare announces a price drop on file storage, something like that. Oh, then you are there building that. You click on the news, solves the problem that you had. I can see that working very very easily.
Yeah, there's a fine line of privacy here that we're trying to not cross. Eventually, some people also work for companies, and the code that they produce, you don't want to have like real time access, or they don't want to give you real time access to what they're producing, which is okay. Um, Again, we're here to help you as an individual. We're not here for your employer. We're not here to serve anyone's interest. We are a completely neutral platform that hopes to be the home for every developer and every builder on the internet. And whoever joins the ride gets all the juice. And if you don't, I mean, you're welcome at any point in time. We're here.
No, that's beautiful. Very very true to the ethos of the community. Well, that's great. Any last comments or remarks for the Vibe Space community before we wrap up, Nimrod?
I'll tell you that the I cannot guess about what each and every one of here is working on, and what do they care about, and what the dreams are. But the only thing I can advocate for is to be very intentional around where you spend your time and on what you spend your time. Being intentional and really thinking deeply and asking yourself the question of what do I really want to achieve? What's going to be the next goal for me? And really focusing on that. This is where you unlock really meaningful stuff. And I think that with AI nowadays, and you've probably heard that from other speakers, but AI is a multiplier. If you're focused and if you're intentional, you're going to become more focused and more intentional with AI. You're going to be able to achieve a lot more. If you're defocused, AI is going to make you even more defocused, and it's going to get you away from your goals. So, the number one piece of advice that I give to all of my friends and all of our community and all of our team at any point in time is like, consistently think, what do you want to do? What's next for you? And don't believe your own bullshit. Try to challenge yourself. Try to talk with other smart people and tell them what you want to build, and see what they have to say about it. Doesn't mean that you need to listen to them and do what they say, but at least speak with other people about that. And then once you know what's that thing, be ruthless and go just for that, and not let anything else focus you from your goal and from your dream. That would be the only piece of advice that I would give in this context, and I hope it's helpful. By the way, if you've listened here all the way, sincerely, thank you. I really appreciate that. I wouldn't have been able to listen to myself for an hour. So by you surviving an entire 60 minutes with me, it's definitely an achievement. Um, and yeah, looking forward to see what everyone's going to build. And Mateos and I are talking about other interesting collaborations, and we're going to see where it takes us.
It was 60 minutes of pure knowledge and orientation. I'm sure that a lot of vibe coaches are going to get a good hold of how the industry is going by watching this session. If you just came to the last minutes of the live, I totally recommend going back an hour ago and getting the full of it. We went through all of the hot topics before discussing the next billion developers and what are the next hot features of daily dev that I'm personally excited to check it out. Thank
Fantastic.
you, Nimrod, for this interview. It was fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for watching. If you stumble into this video in the future, if it didn't come from the Luma page, make sure to subscribe here, luma.com/vibespace. Then you can receive the invites for all of these kind of interviews and other opportunities that we have either virtually or in person around the world, in United States, New York, SF, in Brazil, Europe, in some places. I would love to see you out there building and becoming one of these 1 billion developers that Nimrod was mentioning today. Thank you for all of you, and we're going to wrap up for today. Have a great one.
Bye bye, everyone.
Bye bye.